This has been, I think, one of the more exhausting sets of 2 years back to back for the Cleveland Browns. I think the reason it feels even more exhausting than maybe the time where the Browns went 1-31 is because of expectation, right? The Browns went on that 1-31 slide, but I think people have to remember before 2016, the thought process in Cleveland was like, hey, we're kind of tired of being mediocre. We would rather just go and be all the way bad to get the draft picks that we need to solve our problems, versus being just good enough to get picks that don't really solve your problems. And I think that was kind of the prevailing thought, right? We missed out on Andrew Luck. We missed out on Jared Goff, all these guys that maybe the Browns wanted at quarterback. And we're like, hey, we need to just do what we need to do to secure draft positioning. And that was, so when the Browns went 1-31, it was not really that exhausting. People were like okay with it because one, the team had not been successful in a very long time. And two, we had been a certain brand of unsuccessful that it made being that bad preferable to what the Browns were doing up to that point. This is different, right? Like the Browns before this run were an 11-5 football team, right? Before these last runs of bad seasons, they were an 11-5 football team, a playoff team. So it's not like we feel like they should be this bad, but they just are this bad. Now, this game was a bit of a change of pace, to be honest. Like, it was a more competitive game. It was competitive up into the fourth quarter. The run defense was pathetic in the first half, tightened up in the second half. Like, there's more to take away and actually be happy with in this game versus a lot of the games in the season. I'm interested to see how the fan base reacts to this loss, because me personally, this isn't one of the losses this season that makes me furious, right? Like, this had furious potential, but we are no longer furious at this loss, I think. There were two bits of horrific news, or at least one bit of horrific news that you got in this game. Quinnshon Judkins went down with what seemed like a serious leg injury. Now, we do have an update from Ian Rappaport about this injury, and this update is not necessarily like good news, but it's better than terrible news, I would say. The report is from Ian Rappaport. Star rookie Quinnshon Judkins, who was carted off, suffered a broken leg in today's game. He will be evaluated. He's also being evaluated for knee injury. So broken leg confirmed. He's being evaluated for knee injury. We don't know what that situation is. If he does not have a knee injury, that is ultimately the best case scenario, right? Like, the big thing you want to avoid with Quinshon is a torn ACL or MCL or anything like that, right? Maybe a meniscus tear wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if that were to be the case, but a torn muscle, that would be a tremendous setback, right? A broken leg is about what? This is Google, so again, let me go on the Cleveland Clinic's website. So Cleveland Clinic says this is going to take a few months to heal. A broken leg would take a few months to heal. So don't know what the details are, obviously, of the broken leg, but a broken leg would be a much less severe injury if that were to be the case. So knock on wood, let's hope that injury is not as bad as it looked, because it looked pretty brutal. We'll see what it is. Super unfortunate for Quinshon to not only have his season ended like that, but to also have his season ended before being able to get to 1,000 yards from scrimmage, which he was well on his way to. He ended his season at 947 yards. And it's always brutal when guys get these kind of injuries right before the end of the season. because it truly derails their next season most cases, right? We could look at somebody like Mike Hall, right? Another example of this, had a season-ending injury at the end of this year, last year, and it lingered into this year, and he hasn't been completely right since. The same thing happened with DeJuan Jones in back-to-back years. So super unfortunate that that's happened to Quinnshon Judkins. And no matter the result of the game, how it affects anything, you wish that wouldn't have happened. The positive news in relation to that is it does feel like the Browns are starting to figure out a couple of things in the run game, right? I think Tevin Jenkins is somebody you're going to want to keep around next year. Maybe you keep Teller in there as well, but Tevin Jenkins, I feel like he's going to be the front runner to replace Joe Bitonio at left guard. He's played some solid football. When he's out there, the run blocking seems to be better. He can hit targets in space. I think he's the front runner for that left guard spot that will open up. I think they'll probably go Tevin, maybe a rookie behind him, and then Joe Bitonio. But Tevin continues to be pretty promising out there when he's been in at guard for an injured Wyatt Teller. I know some people think he's going to replace Wyatt completely. I don't think that's going to be the case. One, his injury history is just atrocious, so you can't just get rid of Wyatt, put Tevin Jenkins out there and think that nothing bad's going to happen. He's had injuries every year of his career, including this year. So that would be kind of silly. But I think you probably keep Teller. You probably keep Tevin around. And then you build your line from there. So you probably get a center, look at some tackles in the draft if you're lucky. But yeah, just kind of focus in on that. The run game, I thought, carried the entire offense today. The run game had more yards than the passing game in this one, right? Pass game was 134 yards, run game about 160. Your leading rusher was Shedeur Sanders, who I thought did a really good job scrambling in this one. Rocket Sanders came in. I thought he was pretty impressive. Big body guy, running really hard, 3.8 yards per carry. And then what I liked about this was the variety from the Browns run game. You got like end arounds. You were playing stuff off the end arounds. They were running things out of different formation types, different looks. It was just a much needed change of pace from this Browns run game. Now, let's be honest here. This football team is headed towards a full reset at the coaching, right? Like they look like they are going to fire Kevin Stefanski at the end of the season. Everything that's leaking out, the fact that you haven't gotten the Albert Breer report that Kevin is safe like he got last year this time, that just tells you what direction things are going. It looks like Kevin's going to get fired soon. So, it's nice to see some progress schematically. It's nice to see some progress in the play calling. I don't know how much that ends up mattering because I think Kevin's going to be fired at the end of the year. The one good thing you can say if for wherever Kevin lands, look, this team still fought for him at the end of the day. Back-to-back 3-win seasons so far, and they're still fighting for him. We'll talk about Shedeur in a minute because that's going to be a lengthier conversation here. But yeah, Harold Fanon had a 2-touchdown day. Pretty good day for Harold Fanon, especially you started him on your fantasy team. Thought defensively, this was an interesting game. The first half, they were bad. They were straight up bad in the first half of this game. Second, they gave up, 20 points in the first half. Then the second half comes around, they only give up 3 points in the second half here. I will say this defense has been put in rough spots all season. And I don't think they were really put in rough spots in this game, but I think you're just starting to see the weight of all the shit that they dealt with early in the season affect them at the beginning of these games. It just felt like they weren't locked in mentally these last two first halves for the Cleveland Browns just have not felt locked in. And then they find a way to lock in the second half of these games. Myles Garrett got a half a sack on a pretty crazy play with Josh Allen that puts Myles Garrett a half a sack away from breaking the record. So 1 sack and he breaks the record against Pittsburgh in Cleveland, which would be a fun thing, right? If he were able to break that record in Cleveland. and against Pittsburgh, which would be kind of poetic. It would also be within 16 games, so there would be no argument about who had the better season, even though Myles Garrett is almost certainly going to get that number of sacks and much less passing attempts than Michael Strahan had. So kudos to Myles for getting that done. And if you get a good offense behind this team in the next couple of years, I think Myles is very likely to have a season where he actually does break his record from this year. So I think Myles has much more to do because what he has done has been so difficult this year. It's hard to imagine that he could do more than that, but I truly think he's capable of doing more than that. Let's see. Defensively, I thought Carson Schlesinger played well. This was a bad game for Mahmoud Diabate, at least from the broadcast view. I don't think Devin Bush played especially well in this one. And also, I think the interior guy, Shelby Harris, was pretty bad in this one. I had to look and see how Mason played, but I don't think Mason was awesome in this one either. It was an up and down game for the Browns defense, but they locked in the second half and did give the offense a chance to win. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. In this game is concerned. This was not a good game for Shedeur Sanders. I can see how some people can try to turn it like that, 20-29, but we weren't giving Dylan credit for these kind of games. We really shouldn't give Shedeur credit for these kind of games. I mean, this is a game that felt like it came right out the Dylan Gabriel playbook. Like the yards per attempt are like 5.4 yards. Right in the wheelhouse of where Dylan Gabriel was. I want to see what the air yards per target were, but in the first half, it was pretty low. I imagine it didn't go up in the second half. He averaged in the first half, this is from Daniel Fuisi from ESPN, Shedeur Sanders averaged 0.7 air yards per attempt in the first half. That's the second lowest rate in the first half of this season. It's amazing that rate right there is the second lowest, and that tells you what Dylan Gabriel was doing when he was out there, because I'm almost certain that's Dylan Gabriel that got the lowest. But yeah, it was under a yard per attempt. It's not good, right? Like, it's not good there, especially when his calling card is throwing the ball downfield. Now, he did have the pinky injury, right? And maybe the pinky injury really did affect his ability to throw the ball downfield in this one. And I think there's some grace to give there. But the one touchdown, the two interceptions, one of those interceptions was more of a great play from Joey Bosa. The other interception was 50-50 Shedeur Quinnshon Judkins, right? He threw the ball behind Quinshon. Quinshon didn't make a good adjustment to get to it, but it really wasn't the type of throw you expect to be off target. Like, you expect that throw to be on target. So Shedeur could have thrown a better ball. Quinshon could have made a better adjustment. It's 50-50 in my eyes there. He took a couple of bad sacks, especially late in this game, and then he got the intentional grounding penalty that essentially ended this game for him. Had a chance to put the Browns up to win this game at the end of it, right? Like, he had a legitimate chance to win the game at the end. The Browns defense gave him multiple opportunities, and he did nothing with the football. That's not positive, right? I don't think we would look at that with positive feelings if this were any other quarterback. Now, I know people are going to hit me up with the, hey, man, Peyton Manning wasn't amazing in his first few games, and, the rookie struggle, and I understand all of that. But also, you got to understand that the Browns really don't got time for any of that when it comes to Shedeur, right? When people bring up, Josh Allen struggled early in his rookie year, Peyton Manning struggled early in his rookie year, those are conversations that you can have if a guy's a number one overall pick. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about guys who were number one overall picks, early first round selections. In Drew Brees' case, he was an early second round selection. We're talking about guys who the organization has invested in enough to have those conversations about. You know, Shador is not a first round pick. He's not a second round pick. He's not a third round pick. He's not a fourth round pick. He's a fifth round pick. And you might think his talent doesn't equate to a fifth round selection. And I think that's fair to believe. But ultimately, the Browns' investment in him is a fifth round pick. And the Browns aren't going to hold up the quarterback position and close themselves off to a quarterback in the draft for a quarterback who has 6 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. That's not stopping the Browns from taking a quarterback. And I've said this the whole time Shador's gotten the starts for the rest of the season. And he's at his 6th start, which is the same amount of starts that Dylan Gabriel got, right? So it's going to be fair to compare stats here. You know, when you look at Shador, you've seen some flashes, you've seen some good things, you've seen some bad things. I think Shador can be a pro quarterback eventually, but I don't know if that's going to happen on a timeline that's convenient for the Browns. And I think the Browns should not hold up their franchise to get to that timeline with Shador. I think they got to move on, right? You know, or at least draft somebody and see what Shador can do in that situation. We'll talk about the Browns draft order in just a second. But yeah, like, this has not been a good enough 6 games to stop the Browns from taking a quarterback. And remember, the only thing that was ever going to stop the Browns from taking a quarterback is winning football games for Shador Sanders. And he has not won football. He's won 1 football game against the Raiders, his debut. But after that, he has not won football games for this team, which has put him in an awkward position, right? Like, in this game right here, he had the chance to pull the Browns out of draft position and go down the field and beat the Buffalo Bills. Multiple opportunities to do so. He ends up in the end zone getting an intentional grounder that came this close to getting a safety. Like, Shador has had the opportunities to play his way out of to play the Browns out of quarterback conversations this season. He has not done it. You know, you could argue maybe he did it a little bit in the Tennessee game, but ultimately they made some snafus there that were beyond Shador for sure. But this one, I don't know how we can not say that Shador just did not succeed in those opportunities right there. It was not a good game for Shador. And the Bills are tough, but playing in division opponents who are more familiar with you now, that's going to be even more difficult. Like, Pittsburgh's going to be a really difficult game for him next week. We'll see what he's able to do. But ultimately, what we've seen for sure is not going to stop the Browns from taking a quarterback if they have an opportunity to take a quarterback. Now, let's talk about the opportunity to take a quarterback, because the Kansas City Chiefs lost to the Tennessee Titans today. That means that the Browns, if they lose out, are very likely, we're talking about 95% odds at this point, to get the number 2 pick in the draft. The reason this is the case is because the Browns have the overall tiebreaker of all teams in the top 10 when it comes to strength of schedule. And given that there's only 2 weeks left in the season, their strength of schedule tiebreaker is set to hold, right? It's very likely that it holds at this point, right? It doesn't seem like there's not going to be enough games to put a dramatic enough shift in strength of schedule for the Browns for that tiebreaker to not hold, more than likely. So if that's the case and the Browns' strength of schedule holds like it is very likely to hold, and the Browns only win 3 games this season, that means they jump every team with 3 wins, and they get the first pick of all the teams with 3 wins. Right now, there are 3 teams with, well, let me pull up Thankathon to be 100% correct here. Right now, the Cleveland Browns, when it comes to the draft order, are dealing with, well, coming into this week, there were 3 teams at 2 wins. 2 of those teams play each other next week, the New York Giants and the Las Vegas Raiders. Those 2 teams will play each other. If one of those teams wins, which means there's no tie, then one of those teams will be at 3 wins. So coming into this week, the Browns, if they lost out, were guaranteed to be in the top 3. Now, if the Browns lose out, because Tennessee has 3 wins now, the Browns jump them in the draft order. If the Browns lose out, they'll be at worst at number 2 in the draft. So that is the draft picture. If the Browns don't beat the Steelers next week, the Browns don't beat the Cincinnati Bengals next week, it's pretty obvious what opportunity is ahead of them. They'll have a top 2 pick in a draft that has 2 quarterbacks. It looks like Dante Moore is going to come out of Oregon, and it looks like Fernando Mendoza is coming out at Indiana. Both those guys are bona fide top 5 picks, and the Browns will take one of those 2 quarterbacks, more than likely. Nothing they have seen this year from either Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur would move them off of that, and they have not won enough games to make that conversation more difficult. So they lose out for the rest of the season. We see where the Browns are likely to end up here, and what their future is going to look like. Now, who's going to be coaching that number 1 overall pick? What kind of help are they going to get on the offensive line? What kind of help are they going to get from wide receiver? All of those questions need to be answered before the draft, right? We're going to get a new coach. We're probably going to get some new offensive linemen. We're probably going to get a new wide receiver before we even select the quarterback. Those things are probably going to be done, right? So I know all these questions are happening before the draft, but we're having these conversations out of order. The Browns are going to hit free agency before they hit the draft. The Browns are going to make trades before they hit the draft. The roster could look completely different by the time we get to the draft. And it's very obvious what they could do. And then obviously they also have a lot of draft picks. They have this year's first. They have the Jacksonville first. They also have their own 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round picks, and they have a bunch of 5th round picks. So the Browns have a ton of options to build this team out. In the draft, they'll have cap space because of the Watson insurance and everything else that they've done to structure these contracts. They will be in a position to be able to improve this team this offseason, but they're going to get a new coach. They're going to get some new players. We'll know what that is before they even make a draft pick. We'll know that, before we even get to the combine, right? So we'll see what happens there. But that's what the outlook looks like to be. Some people are happy about that. Some people are thrilled. Some people are finding their peace. We'll see where we are. As far as Shedeur's future goes, I still think that there's something there for him, right? Like maybe he can be on the team next year, potentially be the bridge quarterback next year. I don't have a problem with that being the case. I think if he could be a Davis Mills, that's a win. Right? If him or Dillon Gabriel could be Davis Mills for this team next year, that's a win, but that's going to be dependent on who the head coach is, because head coach is going to look at the stat sheet. He might say, nah, he's gone. We'll see what happens as we move forward, but that's kind of the picture of this game. It was a good effort by the Browns. They gave Buffalo a nice scare, but they didn't ultimately win. And since they did not win, that puts the Browns in a pretty significant draft position going forward. But that's my thoughts on this. Let me know your thoughts in the chat down below. Huge update on the Quinshon thing, because we talked about it earlier. I want to add this update in here. Daniel Ofuise of ESPN, I got to get him on the show, hopefully this week, but holidays are busy. But he says the Browns running back Quinnshon Judkins dislocated his ankle and fractured his fibula. So a fractured fibula and a dislocated ankle. Let's put that into Cleveland Clinic's website. See some rough timelines, some rough unofficial timelines here, right, for those injuries respectively. Ankle dislocation looks like 6 to 12 weeks of healing and 3 to 6 months for a full return to activity. We're talking about a fractured fibula. About 6 to 12 weeks of healing. So 3 months where Quinshon can't work out, basically. And then 3 to 6 months for full recovery. So then 3 to 6 months after that, where he can get back. So we're probably talking about a 6 to 8 month timeline for those injuries, because you can heal at the same time. So He's probably going to be back, hopefully around late August. You would hope late August, early September. But the good news about those injuries is that those aren't the kind of injuries that have a long-term effect on your career. So that's really good news there. It's a really positive update. Again, my timeline is rough. If a doctor contradicts me, please listen to the fucking doctor. I'm a dude in a chair who likes football and talks about football, and I'm not a fucking doctor. All right. So if the doctor says it's 9 months, 12 months, listen to the doctor. If the doctor says it's 6 months, listen to the doctor. The doctor has more clout than me in this conversation. So please default to the doctor. If you're a doctor watching this and you would like to correct me, please feel free to. I'm not going to take it as a shot to my ego because I'm not dumb enough to think I'm smarter than a doctor when it comes to this. So if you're in sports medicine, please let me know what you think that timeline looks like. And if you think this is a better case scenario, but I think this is a better case scenario, it feels like better than torn ACL. You know what I mean? This feels better. Or what I was afraid of, which was broken leg and torn ACL. So that feels like a better result. So there's some silver lining here. Now it correct me if I'm wrong again. It does feel like this is going to cost him another training camp, which is unfortunate. But we have seen Quinshon be able to make that adjustment. So there is that.